Welcome to this video. In this particular video, we are going to talk about things that you should know at different stages in your Java career. And I've come to this conclusion by analyzing quite a few job openings there and talking to industry experts. So basically, you will have a complete clarity as to what all things you should be aware of, what all knowledge you should have, what all skills you should have at different stages. And remember, this might change depending on market, but this is what it is as of today. Okay, so what I've done is I've divided this into 4 parts. One is things for early career in Java development. And by early, I mean 0 to 2 years of experience. So under 2 years is when you are early, whether you're a fresher or at most 2 years of experience. Then we talk about mid-level, wherein you have experience level of 3 to 5 years. And then we talk about senior level, wherein you have experience level of 5+ years. So that is what we are going to talk about. Let's talk about the early career over here. Okay, so when it comes to early career, your goal should be to build rock solid Java foundations. Now, Java foundations meaning you should be aware of core Java concepts, OOPS principles, and you should be able to make real backends. Okay, real backend REST APIs, real backend systems, right? You should be able to write code. You should be aware of frameworks like Spring Boot, Spring. And let me talk about things in detail. So you should be aware of core Java like OOPS principles, collections, exception handling, streams, generics, all of this. Okay, you should be aware of things like build tools. Now, what are build tools? So build tools are basically a tool that you use to get all the dependencies that a project needs to run. For example, in Maven, there are 2 build tools, Maven and Gradle. These are most popular, and these are used in Java world a lot. So if your project needs, let's say Stripe or some sort of library, then you mention that in the Maven build file, which is pom.xml, and Gradle will have build.gradle. So you mention there, and the build tool will do the job of getting that dependency and adding it to your project. Okay, so this is build tool. You should be aware of them. What is version control? You should be aware of version control. So understand this when you're applying for a job, or when you're working in a company, or if you want to work in a company, they would have a team normally, and they would expect you to deliver in teams, right? So you should be aware of, because normally what happens is when there is teamwork involved, or every software development project today has team involved. So there should be Git and GitHub that they use internally. And you should be aware of concepts like commit, branching, what are pull requests, all of this, right? Databases. So you should be aware of basic SQL, like MySQL, PostgreSQL are the most popular ones out there. So you should be able to write SQL queries, and you should be able to debug your own data. So this is expected from a developer, because normally you would be working with databases. And if you want to see whether data is inserted or not, you should be aware of basic SQL, right? IDEs. So you should be aware of IntelliJ IDEA, Eclipse, and all these kind of IDEs that exist in the market. You should know how to use them. Testing frameworks. So having knowledge of testing frameworks like JUnit, Mockito helps a lot. So JUnit is a way to check your code, whether it does what is expected out of it. And with Mockito, you can fake parts of your app so that you can test small pieces of your entire application in isolation, right? So it allows you to create mocks. That is what it does. So you should be aware of testing frameworks, these 2 things when it comes to testing. Spring Boot knowledge. Now, this is where real thing comes in. You will be building REST APIs using Spring Boot, right? So you should be aware of Spring Framework, first of all. And you should be aware of what Spring is, how it works, and why Spring Boot exists, right? So these things you need to understand. REST APIs. You should be aware of what are REST APIs. You should be aware of JPA Hibernate. Now, JPA Hibernate is a concept which is Jakarta Persistence API. That is what is JPA. And it makes use of Hibernate, and using that the data is persisted to the database. So that is something you should be aware of, how to make use of JPA Hibernate at a very basic level. Then you will also be aware, or you should also be aware of Spring Security. So this is a framework within Spring that enables you to secure your application, and validations also. So because you will be building REST APIs, so you cannot just accept any data. you need to implement validations. So all these things you should be aware. And once you're aware of all these things, you can build a full-fledged REST API that can be consumed by the outside world. And yes, you should be also aware of cloud development. Cloud deployment, because you should be able to deploy your applications to the cloud. So this is important, right? Now, when it comes to cloud deployment, you can learn, you can understand the basic deployments. If you're a fresher, you can understand the basic deployments in AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, right? So you can explore that. And here are some starter projects ideas that you can look at. Basically a simple command line based application, like to-do application. I'm just giving an example. You can have a simple REST API created which performs create, read, update, and delete, like CRUD operations, along with unit tests. All right, so this is something that you can do. And if you are going for an interview, you should be showcasing your GitHub repo with the Spring Boot APIs built. And you should have even deployed a demo project to Heroku, servers like Heroku or Render. Okay, because they have a free plan, so you can make use of them, right? And show your applications or REST APIs that you have built. Now, of course, you should have soft skills over here. Some soft skills that people look at is you should be open to feedback. You should be eager to learn, because you're a beginner, right? If you're a fresher, then this is evaluated even more. How open you are to feedback, how open you are to learn. So all these things are important and mandatory for a early career in Java development. And if you know all this, you can easily get a junior developer Java role, right? So there are ample of job opportunities for junior developer Java role or entry-level Java developer role. Or if you're still in college, you can even get an internship as a Java developer if you know all these things. These things are not that difficult. Let me tell you that. Okay, you should be aware of things. Building REST APIs and all is not that difficult if you learn things properly and follow a proper routine and a plan of action. I'm just giving you pointers over here, which can be converted into a roadmap at your end. And then once you have the roadmap, you can follow it and win the interview. So that's about early career or for junior level Java developers. Let's talk about mid-level Java developer or mid-level Java engineer jobs, right? Now, this is where, okay, you have decent amount of experience, right? You are between 2 to 5 years of bracket, and your goal basically is to build larger systems that run reliably, securely. You should be able to scale the applications and operate production-ready services. This is what is expected because you're beyond a fresher, right? Now, over here, what is expected from you? You are expected to know advanced Spring Boot concepts like JSON Web Tokens, JWT tokens, security. They should be at the back of your hand, right? You should be aware of OAuth 2 different flows, why OAuth 2 exists, and why it should be used. Spring Data JPA, you should be aware of designing how you can design schemas. You should be able to do validations, advanced validations, and error handling, exception handling. Okay, now, I'm not saying that these things you should not know as a junior level developer. Okay, junior level developer can also be aware of JWT, OAuth 2. Well, if you're aware of that, it gives you an edge. Okay, what I mean with this over here is the things that I had for a like junior level developer. Okay, these are non-negotiable. These are must-haves. You can see core must-haves. Okay, but if you also know over here, RabbitMQ, Kafka. You also know, if you're a fresher and you also know OAuth 2 flows, if you also know how you can design schemas, validations, advanced validation concepts, microservices, if you know all this, then it gives you an edge. You know more than what you should be knowing, right? So if you're applying for jobs and if you have extra knowledge, that always helps. So I'm not saying that you should only be aware when you have crossed the 2 years of experience. That it's not like that. Okay, these are core must-haves for a Java developer with 2 to 5 years of experience based on my analysis, right? So I was here, okay, exception handling, then microservices. So you should be aware of microservices, what is Spring Cloud, config server, how it works, Eureka, gateway. You should be aware of these setups and how the importance of each, right? Messaging and integration. You should be aware of messaging services like RabbitMQ, Kafka, what they are, how you can make use of them in the application. Caching and data. So normally what happens is to improve the speed and performance of the application, you might want to implement caching. So there has to be something like Redis that needs to get involved. So how you can do that? Okay, you might also need to do DB migrations with Flyway or things like Liquibase. So that is something you should be aware of. Resilience, so circuit breaker, you should be aware of circuit breaker, rate limiting. Okay, observability. Now what is resilience? So basically, if there is an API that is failing, so it adds resilience to the network. So the entire application won't crash, but because just one microservice is failing, it will be handled in the right way, or it won't prevent the damage to the entire application. That's what resilience is. Rate limiting is. Okay, rate limiting meaning you get a lot of API calls on a particular API service, and you have a rate limiting functionality implemented, so it will block a call above a particular threshold. So it's basically to prevent abuse or DOS attacks. So that's what rate limiting is. Okay, caching, like I said, it's used to improve speed. Messaging and integration, basically, if you want to do asynchronous messaging, okay, asynchronous communication, you need to know RabbitMQ Kafka, right? So this is what it is. And then you have observability. Now, if you're running a lot of applications, a lot of services on your machine, or it's being run, then you need to also monitor it. So there are tools like Prometheus, Grafana, Zipkin, ELK Stack. All of this you can make use of to monitor your application logs, metrics, and everything. So that is what observability is. Like if there is an error that happens, if there is a API request, it will go through multiple services, right? One API request will go through multiple services. Now, if it did not respond the way it was supposed to, where did it fail? So for that, you will need all sort of logs for all the services so that you can trace and you can check where things went wrong. So in such cases, observability comes into play. That is what observability is. And with these tools like Prometheus, Grafana, Zipkin, you can implement observability in your microservices. Integration testing. So integration testing meaning you should be aware of test containers. Okay, things like test containers, you should be aware of REST assured. Okay, so all of this you should be. Then CI/CD authoring. As a fresher, if you're aware of things like CI/CD or Docker Kubernetes, then it adds value to your resume. You know all this stuff, right? But for mid-level developer, you should be aware of CI/CD, so and Kubernetes also, and Docker. I mean, so why you should be aware of this? Okay, now this varies from companies to companies. So I've seen some companies, they have a separate DevOps team who is going to where there are developers who are going to write CI/CD pipelines. They are going to make use of. They are going to write files for Kubernetes. They are going to do the setup. But in some companies, they expect developers themselves to do all of this. So there is no separate team for doing this. But developers only have to containerize the images. They have to push it to Docker Hub. They have to write config files for Kubernetes. They have to deploy all of that. They have to write CI/CD. All of that developer only have to do. So it depends on where you are applying and what is the level of the company, how big the company is, whether they have separate teams for doing these things or not. Right? But I would recommend you should know CI/CD. Okay, even if your company has separate teams for doing this, even if your company has, you should also know Kubernetes, Docker. Even if your company has separate team for doing this, okay, still there will be scenarios wherein you might want to look at the files that they have written and understand or check something. So if you have knowledge, you would be able to do that yourself without the help of others. You would be independent. But if you don't know that, you would be dependent. So I would recommend, irrespective of how a large company you're working with, whether they have a separate team or not, you should be aware of CI/CD. You should be aware of container orchestration. You should be aware of cloud deployment. And yes, one major responsibility, or I should not call it major, one responsibility that will be added to your shoulders is you will be also mentoring junior developers to ensure their code quality, coverage. You will collaborate with cross-functional teams, right? So yes, CI/CD authoring is there, container orchestration is there, cloud deployment is there. All these things you should be aware of. Now, what is CI/CD? If you're not aware, okay, I'll start with Docker. So Docker allows you to create images of your application, and images meaning all the dependencies, everything, the tool that your application needs to run is packed in a container, in an image, and it's being pushed somewhere over the internet, right? And when you run those images, a container is created, right? Now, if there are a lot of services in your application, to manage those containers, you need something called as Kubernetes. right? So you have Kubernetes setup which defines the deployment services and how many services for every container should run, how many pods should run. All that definition is given in the Kubernetes files, right? And there is something called as Minikube and Helm as well, which you make use of, which I won't be going deep into. But Minikube and Helm basically allow you to manage your Kubernetes cluster. That is what I can tell you right now. And then once you have Kubernetes set up, you have CI/CD also done, wherein you can build pipelines. So you define the process, like first the test should be run, then Docker images should be created, then it should be deployed to the respective environment. So all this process is defined in CI/CD files, right? You don't have to do all these steps manually. You define this in a script form once, and then you just execute or run that CI/CD pipeline, and it will do everything. It will test, it will create images, it will deploy to the respective environments, and depending on your configuration, it will do everything. So all that automation is done at the CI/CD level. Okay, so that's what you should be aware of, is what I feel. Looking at the job market, there are tons of jobs that I see. Okay, I'll just give you some gist basis my analysis also. Here I've written CI/CD authoring at mid-level or Java level developer. But when I actually analyze the job openings, I could also see some companies expecting even junior developers to know CI/CD authoring, Kubernetes. They expected developers to know Docker. So all of that they expected junior developers also to know. So it's a plus if you're applying at such company, and if you're aware of these concepts at early stage or in early development career, then it's a plus. Okay, it gives you an edge over others because you have tons of knowledge. And of course, it's not just about knowledge. Okay, what you need to do is you also need to build projects. For example, you need to build microservices project. Okay, with service discovery. These are some ideas that I've written over here. Or you can implement a full CI/CD pipeline, like taking the code from Git, building it, testing it, creating Docker image, and then pushing it out with the help of Kubernetes. Something like that. So this entire pipeline can be created, and with just one command, code is taken from Git and it's pushed, it's deployed. That's it. You don't have to do any manual steps. So all this you can do. You can showcase your microservices system in a public repo. You can create your portfolio. You can have some projects. You can deploy it to Kubernetes cluster, and you can have monitoring dashboard screenshots. Of course, you cannot run it in cloud because it will cost you money, but you can have screenshots done with whatever you have implemented, and you can have it included on your portfolio, right? So these things are important. Now, of course, like I mentioned, some job openings for early stage developers also had the expectations of CI/CD, Kubernetes, advanced cloud deployments, okay? Because teams might be small in those companies and they might expect the developers to do more. So that's something you need to have in mind. Also, microservices knowledge was expected in one of the job openings that I saw for freshers, or not freshers, I should say. It was for a junior level developer. Okay, so depending on the kind of company you are joining and how big the team is, the mileage will vary. But this is what I could see in major job openings. Okay, soft skills. Of course, soft skills are important over here at this stage. You should be good at mentoring. You should think clearly, and you should have the ability to take ownership. These three things is something that you need to demonstrate even in the interview. Right, even in the interview, that is really important. So yeah, this is for mid-level developer. Then I have for a senior architect, which is 5+ years of experience. Now over here, when it comes to senior architect, or when you have 5 years plus of experience, you generally have a team under you. And you generally mentor others. You ensure that the system is designed properly, the architecture is proper. You ensure reliability as well. So that's something you do. You are actually leading teams at this stage, big, large teams. Okay, and you should be aware of different architectural patterns like domain-driven design. Okay, you should be aware of how you can keep your core logic separate from other details. So all of these patterns come into play over here. You should be aware of different patterns over here. You should be aware of enterprise level CI/CD and GitOps. Okay, this is something you should be aware of. Advanced pipelines using which you can manage your code as well as the infrastructure. How you can write infrastructure as code. That is something you should be aware of. Kubernetes in production. You should be aware of how you can deal with complex Helm charts, use service mesh for traffic control and security. All of that you should be aware. You should be master with cloud. Okay, like AWS, GCP, Azure, and you should have deep knowledge on these services. Security and compliance you should be good at, and SRE practices, for example, site reliability engineering. So you should be aware. I could see some job opening expecting this. Then leadership skills you should have. You should do architecture review, cost optimization, technical mentoring, all of that, right? And you could have some projects mentioned on your resume, like you have designed and deployed a system basically that runs in multiple regions with deployments. So there are multi-region deployment, and there is zero downtime as such. So this could be one of the things that for showcase. Okay, soft skills, yes, technical leadership, decision making, stakeholder communication, all this is important at this particular stage. Now with this, I also see some alternative career path, okay, that developers often branch out in. So one career path is full stack developer, full stack Java developer. So if in your company, people or organization is expecting you to do the UI part as well as the backend part, that's when full stack developer emerges. And you have to take additional responsibility to make use of your own API. So you're building the front end system as well as the backend system. Now, I could see full stack developer role at different levels. For example, for junior developers, some companies were expecting or hiring full stack Java developer, and they basically were looking for a Java developer at an early stage. So like junior level, 1 year experience or something like that. Then there was also opening for mid-level Java developer who is full stack. So mileage will vary over here. Okay, responsibilities will vary. Android or mobile developer. I've seen some people branch out to become Android or mobile developer after they learn Java, Spring Boot, and they start building mobile apps. So this is one alternative career path that happens. DevOps or platform engineer. Once people learn about CI/CD, Terraform, Docker, Kubernetes, they fall in love with platform management and DevOps. So if that's the case, then they switch over to DevOps role and they become a platform engineer, wherein their job is to implement CI/CD pipelines, Terraform, make use of Terraform, Docker, Kubernetes, all of that. Right now, like I said, not every company will have DevOps role. If it's an early stage company, it won't have DevOps role. That is what is likely. But depending on the size of the company, DevOps are important, and they basically play an important role in the company. Then you have cloud engineer or site reliability engineer. This is another branch that I have seen people land into. Okay, so yeah, this was the complete overview based on the job openings that I have analyzed. I hope you all found this to be valuable. And if you like this kind of content, please show some love in the comment below. Let me know what experience level you are on, and where are you joining in from, and what sort of videos I should bring on this channel. Thank you for love and support so far.